likened this motion to the tremendous motion of the heavens. He saw the heavens moving about the earth in a great pageantry, an eternal processional, without beginning or end. Then the second division of the heavens, which he recognized, was a kind of psychic field, which was located between the first motion and the firmament. And this psychic field was the seed ground of souls. For as all spiritual things had their life in the first motion, so souls had their life in the first formative processes of space. Souls were therefore the oldest of forms, inasmuch as they were all compounds, composed of a spiritual and a material factor. The third part of this great circle of the heavens, the third concentric layer of it, the one inward and nearest to man, was called the firmament. And this firmament was a kind of wall built around space, a crystalline wall, enclosing within itself the mechanism of the solar system. Therefore, beyond the planets and their orbits were these three divisions of the sky, going on and on and on. And in these divisions were the abodes of the great creator gods. Always these gods dwelt in the heavens, in the firmament, because to the ancients the heavens represented the sphere of causes, the sphere of principles and energies, the invisible from which the visible came. And this invisible was a world of itself, a thing apart, populated by beings that were real but invisible. And to these were given various names, and they were called the gods. Now the firmament, because it enclosed the solar system, and therefore represented the uppermost parts of our physical solar world, this sphere was like a mountain, for it was above the earth, and it was far above the range of mortal mountains. And to the Indian philosophers, this mountain was Meru, the abode of the gods. To the later Shivites, it was Kailasa, the great mountain of Himalaya. It was the Olympus of the Greeks, and the mysterious Jerusalem golden mountain of Christianity. It was a mountain because it was above, and men lifted up their eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh their help. So man, looking upward, did so not just quantitatively or physically, but in a symbolic sense, a looking toward the superior. And this superior for him was the strange sky that closed him in, as with a curtain of blue spangled with stars. In this process, therefore, we begin to see how the ancients devised their egg of the world, the strange shell of this egg being the firmament, and beyond the firmament another world extending on and on. We get a very good picture of this concept in the revelation of St. John, also in Muhammad's night journey to heaven, and in the divine Pymander of Hermes Trismegistus. Here we also find it in the descent of Istar through the seven gates to descend into the underworld, because this heaven abode was separated from the earth upon which man stood by the royal arches of Enoch, the royal arches of the sky, the arcs of the planets. And as man ascended through the orders and orbits of these planets, he came near to the empyrean, or the great abode of the stars, the firmament. And by inspiration, by inward illumination, this ascent lifted him above matter and into the abode of the gods. And this was represented by placing a small door in the sky, through which St. John is said to have passed in his mystical reveries to examine the world that lay above. And here he found the sea of glass, before which stood the throne of the Eternal, hymned by the 24 elders, surrounded by the angels and symbols, and in the midst of it standing the Lamb with the seals of revelation. And in this great vision, then, we had man moving into what he regarded as the causal universe. And below this causal universe, within the mysterious walls of the firmament, was a methodological universe, a universe of means, represented by planets, and finally a universe of ends, represented by elements. Thus the universe consisted of a cause moving through certain methods or means, and finally flowing into receptivities or ends, called material or substantial. Thus we find also in these ancient mythological concepts, all life, as Plato points out, falls into generation through the Milky Way, and from this, descending by the ladder of the planets, comes ultimately into material embodiment. The Greeks had many legends and fables about these things, but I think from the standpoint of astrotheology, we have to assume that the ancients recognized the 12 signs of the zodiac and the great northern and southern constellations, forming altogether 36 major patterns in the sky. That the ancients represented these or recognized them as the channels through which the great universal energies beyond man's conception flowed down into the mystery of his solar system and into the mystery of his own corporeal life. Thus these constellations came to have certain meanings, certain distinct and special attributes, and it was believed that as the ancient Jewish people held that there were 12 tribes of Israel, Israel being an ancient generic term simply to signify the world, humanity, and kinds of life, that there were 12 orders of life that were nourished and fed by the energy which fell through the constellations of the zodiacal band, and that these 12 were further differentiated by the northern and southern constellations until 36 forms or 36 emanational currents could be recognized. It was all heaven moving in upon man, supplying him constantly with energies. It was man's concept that when his material life was finished, he would return again to the sky from which he came. He must first, however, pass through a kind of purging in purgatory, or a place of darkness underneath the earth. He went down into the earth, but his spirit returned to the stars, and beyond the stars, into the mysterious heavenly world, which was the magnificent counterpart of the lowly earth that we know. This forms a kind of study in anatomy, the anatomy of the universe. And in the researches that we carry on relating to these subjects, we become increasingly aware that all this fitted together to give us a great religious idea, a religious concept that was to remain and be restated through practically every faith of mankind. So let us try and examine for a little while the development of the concept of the mysteries, as these mysteries depended upon the constellational diffusion. We told you something last week about the precession of the equinoxes, and how the great religions and faiths of the world were influenced by the sun's crossing over, or the passing over of the sun at the vernal equinox. This is part of our story, but there is very much more to it. So let us try and follow for a few minutes some of the symbolism that will help us in connection with this. We all know the labors of Hercules. We also know the partial story repeated of these labors in the story of Samson. We are aware of the story of the 12 adventures or voyages of Sinbad the Sailor. All of these have to do with the same type of cosmological symbolism. This mysterious 12 returns again in the 12 prophets, the 12 patriarchs, and the judges that judged over Israel. They come back again in the jewels of the breastplate of the high priest. The loaves of the shewbread. They come again in the circle of the 12 disciples. and in all of the different groups that we have, wherever the astronomical symbolism impresses itself upon religion, we find the revival of three numbers of great importance: 12, 7, and 4. These numbers always return because they are the great astronomical numbers. If then we assume that the world moves around this great circle, which was the golden or yellow road of the sun in the ancient Chinese philosophy, we see life proceeding in this way. We find also that in this pattern, a solar system such as ours must be part of a constellational diffusion. The ancients said that our sun is a small star in the tail of one of the fishes of Pisces. Therefore, that we belong to a being or a group of beings called blessed souls, and that we are therefore ourselves one of the 12 hierarchies. That the lords or powers of the 12 signs were referred to as hierarchs. The hierarchs, for example, of Capricorn were the archangels. The hierarchs of Aquarius were the angels. And the hierarchs of Pisces are humanity. Humanity, therefore, is a divine being, a hierarchy. And this divine being is one of the 12 orders of life, supported by the zodiac, as we find it encircling the empyrean. Now you might say that this zodiac encircles many suns, and is made up of an infinite number of suns. So we come to a fine point that was rather carefully worked out by the ancients. This is true. Every star that forms part of the zodiacal mystery, and even those not directly within the band of the zodiac, belong in some mysterious way to these 12 hierarchs. But they are related to the zodiac in different perspectives and in different relationships. Actually, we are in the constellation of Pisces, although we do not know it. Therefore, each of the stars within a certain constellation has a certain polarization. And another star within the constellation of Aquarius has a different polarization. And as a result of that, its relation to all the other signs is different. Consequently, actually, in this great family of planets and stars, there are no two alike. Each one is in a different relationship to all the others. And each one is passing through a great cycle of growth according to the laws governing its own constellational body. For this constellational body is a superior being within which a group of suns exist and have their being. All these divisions were charted and mapped for the ancients in order to give us some concept of the magnitude of the world in which we live. Man being of the sign of the fishes, the constellation of Pisces, becomes the dominant note in connection with him. And therefore, as this was the hierarch of the blessed souls, it indicates that within this constellation, regardless of the particular sun involved with its attendant planets, there is a certain kind of growth going on, a growth unique to this particular world, to this particular sphere of growth and development. And this growth is the kind of growth that we call evolution. The fact that man and all creatures known to man must attain by a kind of growing distinguishes the hierarchy to which they belong. Man must therefore evolve, releasing from within himself by a sequence of patterns and laws the potentials locked within himself. Man is therefore placed in a world of self-improvement, a world of becoming, a world which was not known to the angels, a world that was never experienced by the archangels, because their orders of growth are different from our own. Their way of unfolding is entirely and totally dissimilar. We are therefore this strange world in which we must earn our bread with the sweat of our brow. We belong in a merit system that is peculiar to us. We belong also to a particular type of being which has within itself this great problem of ultimate assimilation.